Hello and welcome back to Naval Action. This is a video probably more for beginners than it is for those of you who've been playing for a while and are kind of super sim enthusiasts. So a couple of weeks ago I was running around in my little Renomé, famous for its speed. I was doing a bit of open world travel, and then we were trying to chase down some pesky pirates. And being in the Renomé, my job was to sort of catch up with them and chase them down. And I was somewhat disappointed with my speed, and I'm thinking to myself, well, this is a bit bizarre. Here I am in the fastest ship you can get around the level I was at. Why am I not ripping holes in the sea and leaving skid marks behind me on the ocean itself? And the answer is because your ship sails at top speed differently depending on the ship, and of course based on how it's made. So if you look at these lovely ships, they're very complicated beasties. I mean, this thing's got, I don't know, it's got like 16 sails open. The sails are all over the place, they're all in different spots on the ship, they're all catching different amounts of wind. And then of course you've got the shape of the hull, and how much hull is in the water as to the sort of drag coefficient. And then of course there's other things we can do, which I'll talk about in a moment, to modify speed. So, as is the way with any discovery in a game that's got lots of depth and modelling to it, what you have to do is a bit of research. Now, because it's early access, you don't get spoon-fed a whole bunch of information as to how to make your ship go faster. You have to find that out for yourself. So the best place to find that out for yourself is do yourself a mission, like I've done, and then just don't leave it. Stay in the mission and have a potter around and learn. So what I discovered was there's a website. I'm just going to show it you now. I'll put it in the link below. Just give me a second to fertle around with my video capture software. There's a website that lets you know effectively the dynamics of each ship and how it sails. So it's called Naval Action Craft. It's one of these fantastic things built by a member of the community. From memory, it's a chap called Wolf or some such. And what he's done is he's incorporated data that I think, because I think this was done during sea trials, was collated by a clan called, it says it here actually, Doran's Rakers. And they did a whole bunch of testing, and what they've done is they've given us this fantastic set of data that Wolf's put into graphs. So I'm looking at a Bell Pool now. I can bring up a brig, I can bring up like a knot square rigger, one of the lynxes, and it shows you their speed dynamics. Whoa, what is speed dynamic? It shows you, based on the angle of the wind, how fast your ship will go. So basically, you've got the wind at 0 degrees, which means it's blowing straight into your face, and then you've got the wind at 180, which basically means it's blowing up your bottom. Which is more or less how I've got my ship now. I've got the wind completely behind me, so on this graph that's 180 degrees. At 180 degrees I will do 10 knots or thereabouts. However, if I turn my ship so the wind is 150 degrees, I should hit my top speed. Now it should be noted some ships have 2 points where they will hit top speed. Now this is very, very important information to know as a captain. Let me just flip back to the game itself. This is a very, very important thing to know as a captain, because obviously speed is almost as important as how many guns you carry. Especially if you're French, you need to know how to get away as quickly as possible should anybody else sail anywhere near you. Other nations might need it for chasing people down. So the graph was telling me when I was looking at the graph there that if I sail with the wind at 150 degrees, I should hit top speed. So what does that mean? So right now, if I just get the wind so it's perfectly behind me, and I'll show you that in a second, I'm just turning my ship slightly. If we look down here in the bottom left hand corner, Here we see the wind is blowing straight up my backside, across the body of the ship and out the nose. And obviously you can imagine that the sails at the front aren't catching as much wind because the sails at the back are fundamentally stealing it. So what I do is I need to turn my ship so the wind is blowing at me from behind at 150 degrees. I'm not a scientist, how am I meant to work that out? Well, the good news is it's quite easy. Each one of these little lines on your compass is 15 degrees. So if we turn twice, it doesn't matter left or right because all of your sails pivot. So if we turn 2, and I believe the correct sailing term for this is nipples, if we turn 2 nipples on the compass, the wind will be from behind us and it will be at 150 degrees. And what you should see is before I was travelling at about 10, and now you'll see I will gradually speed up. Now it's very important you notice that I do in fact only, or indeed you do in fact, you only gradually speed up, and you basically gain about 1/10 of a knot per second. Not exactly, but about. Now the reason this is important is if you're chasing somebody and you keep changing your direction off your best speed, you bleed speed really quickly and you get it back really slowly. So here you go. Now I should probably reach in this ship. This ship isn't built for speed. I have no speed mods on it, so I'll probably hit about 10.7, 10.8, something like that. Now you can build ships with different equipment modded to them and out of different wood to get a speed advantage. So if your ship is built from fir, it will be 2.5% quicker. If it's built from teak or oak, it will be the speed it says on the box, which for the bell pool is about 12.1. If you build it out of live oak, you'll have lots of extra health, but you'll actually lose 2.5% of speed. Now, why doesn't it do 12.1 or 12.2 like it says on the box? The reason here is, as far as I can understand from reading the dev notes, is that your cannons count against your ship's weight. That lowers your ship into the water, and in doing so causes more drag, and in doing so causes a little bit of speed bleed, which I'm pretty sure is the technical term. Or it might be something to do with draft, but I always think of beer when someone says draft. Now, what can you do to make your ship go faster? Well, first of all, build it out of fir, and it will do 2.5% faster. Remembering 2.5% off 11.8 really isn't very much, right? It might give you 11.9. The other thing is you can fit a speed trim. And a speed trim will give you an extra percentage, and in fact if you get a Mastercraft one from memory it gives you like an extra 2.5%. What you should be wary of is if you put extra planking on your ship to make you more beefy, that will reduce your speed. If you put turning trim on to allow you to turn quicker, that reduces your straight line speed. And if you add ballast, so perhaps you're sailing in a trink, and trinks tend to lean heavily to one side, so you'll see here I've only got a very small amount of lean, maybe 5 degrees. A trink will lean much more than that. And then when you go into the guns, your trink guns, they're pointing up here, which can be a bit pesky. Or of course if you're on this side, you're shooting dolphins, which might not be your objective unless perhaps you're a Japanese scientist. So you could add ballast, but it will slow your ship down by about 1%. Now I have done a bit of testing with cargo. Does cargo slow you down? Because according to the devs, they've now modelled the cannon weight into the speed of the ship. So just before I did this mission, I did another one where I had the maximum amount of cargo a bell pool can carry, which I think is 250 tons. And I have to say it made no difference at all. So I was about 11.8. So this is where I just need to point out, if I was chasing someone, I decided to tack in a little bit to get closer to them because maybe they're leaving me on an angle. Just look at how quickly I lose my speed. So it's dropping down there, and then I say, and now I need to come back in line to get back to my maximum speed. So I've gone down to 9.7 and now I'm coming back in line. And I'm going to start moving back up to my top speed. So you'll see there, I've lost a lot of speed. I lost the best part of a couple of clicks in speed. Now, if your opponent is as fast as your straight line speed, so if they're only 9.7, this is a good way of catching them up and then moving closer, catching them up and moving closer. If, however, your opponent is about the same, is perhaps just a little bit slower than you, you really are going to have to sail to your best aspect, which for me is 150 degrees. Now, it's very important for you to understand the aspects for each ship because they're all slightly different. Some of the ships can be quite quick sailing close to the wind, which might mean the wind is basically blowing towards them, but perhaps at an oblique angle. So it's good to know. So something like the Renome and the Niagara, they're both quite fast, not their top speed, but quite fast with the wind coming towards them, but at an oblique angle. And so finally, before I clock off, because this is really just a bit of a quickie for you, if you leave battle and get into open world, the same is true, but I have to say I don't believe it's sort of proportionally as good. So there's some barricades for us, hurrah, that's just what we were hoping for. So if I jump out into open world, now obviously when you're sailing in open world, it runs in an accelerated model, so you know it's not quite twice your speed, or maybe it is. It's an accelerated model. So let's just wheak up to full sail, and again what I'll do is I'll just get myself so the wind is right up my backside. So the compass now is in the right hand side of the screen, of course. So more or less, if I get the compass so the wind is straight up my jacksy, you'll see there I'm doing 15/16 knots. If I turn that off now 30 degrees, or, and remember as sailors refer to it, 2 nipples, what you should see is I'm starting to do slightly faster, 19, 19, 20, 20, and it'll go to 20, 21, and it might flit around. Okay, now that looks like where it's going to be. The wind's just moved a touch, actually. So what you're seeing there is on open world, you also get a speed advantage, and that's important too, because obviously if you're trying to chase someone down to get a good attack on them, or you're French and you're trying to run away from someone who's trying to attack you, it's very important you know where your best angle is to approach them from. So you can get the attack on them. So just to reiterate, there's basically 3 things you can do to affect your speed. One is use the Naval Action Craft website that I'll link in the description, and using the data fantastically collected by the community, by Duran's Rakers, learn very strongly what is the best aspect for each of my ships. Learn it for your traders, learn it for your mission ships, learn it for your PvP ships. Over time, learn it for the ships you're going to be chasing, so you know when they're in a good wind and what their top speed is. If you really want a speed ship, so perhaps you want a Renome for doing a bit of pinch pirating or trader chasing, then make it out of fur. Okay, because fur will give you a 2.5% speed boost. If you make it out of live oak, it's going to give you a 2.5% speed deficit. And then look at adding a speed trim. And I think from memory, and I don't have the data, I think the other mod that might give you a speed benefit is a copper bottom. Because I think the idea is with a copper bottom, you don't get all sorts of creatures growing on the bottom of your ship. You're not basically running around with a garden stuck to the arse of your ship, which can slow you down if you've got lots of algae and seaweed and barnacles and other things hanging off the bottom of your ship. So I think a copper bottom gives you a speed boost. But you can always review the different mods that you can either craft or buy for your ship, and of course the list is changing all the time. And what you have to remember is, with all those mods, like everything else, they vary based on the quality of the mod. Are they basic? Are they common? Are they fine? Are they mastercrafted? And so on and so forth. Anyway, pardon me, the goal of this was really more for the newbie players like myself. When you're trying to learn how to play the game, it is early access. It doesn't put everything on a plate for you, so you have to learn how to do it. Oh, a bit of a lag spike there. You have to learn how to do it. Internet is your friend. It will tell you how things work. So I've done a bit of research. These things will modify slightly over time, but the nature of these things won't. Fundamentally, how your ship is constructed, how you angle your ship into the wind, and the mods you put on it will affect the speed. And by all accounts, if you're in Australia and someone anywhere near you is using Netflix, be prepared for ping-a-dings. Alright, well, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, hit subscribe. And if you didn't, hit subscribe, because maybe you'll enjoy the next one. I will see you on the ocean, and I will catch you.